Our stories are not real and made for entertainment purpose only. Subscribe to my channel for more stories. Now let's begin this one. My wife demanded divorce after my third deployment. Then I placed one document that changed it all. I survived 3 tours in a war zone, but nothing prepared me for the betrayal waiting at home. A single note from my wife that shattered my world. I'd been a soldier for 12 years, serving 3 tours in some of the harshest corners of the world. Each deployment chipped away at me physically, mentally, emotionally, but I always held on to the thought of coming home to my wife, Sarah, and our 2 kids, Emma and Liam. They were my anchor, my reason to keep going when the nights got long and the gunfire got close. Emma, with her gap-toothed grin and love for drawing, would send me sketches of our dog, Rusty, in every letter. Liam, barely 7, would record voice messages, his tiny voice promising to save me the best cookies when I got home. Sarah's letters were my lifeline, filled with love and reassurances that she'd wait forever. But after my 3rd deployment, everything I thought I knew about my family unraveled in a way I never saw coming. It was late spring when I returned, the desert heat still clinging to my skin as I stepped off the plane. My duffel bag weighed heavy on my shoulder, but my heart was lighter than it had been in months. I'd pictured this moment 1,000 times, Sarah's smile brighter than the sun, Emma and Liam running into my arms, maybe even Rusty barking at my heels. But when I scanned the crowd at the airport, there was no one. No familiar faces, no handmade signs with "Welcome home, Daddy," in crayon. Just a sea of strangers, their chatter blurring into white noise. My heart sank, but I told myself it was a mix-up. Maybe Sarah got the flight time wrong. Maybe the kids had school. I pulled out my phone to call her straight to voicemail. A prickle of unease crept up my spine. I took a cab to our house in the suburbs, a modest 2-story we'd bought after our first year of marriage. The lawn was overgrown, weeds choking the flower beds Sarah used to tend religiously. The mailbox was stuffed with unopened bills, some marked final notice. Odd, I thought. Sarah was always meticulous, the kind of woman who'd alphabetize the spice rack. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, expecting the familiar smell of her lavender candles or the sound of the kids playing. Instead, the house was silent, cold, like a tomb. The furniture was the worn leather couch, the dining table scratched from years of family dinners, but something felt off, like the soul of the place had been sucked out. Sarah. I called, my voice echoing in the empty living room. No answer. I dropped my bag and checked the kitchen, the bedrooms, the backyard. Nothing. Emma's room, usually a mess of crayons and stuffed animals, was eerily tidy, her bed made with military precision. Liam's room was the same, his toy soldiers lined up like they hadn't been touched in months. My stomach twisted into knots. Where were they? I found the note on the kitchen counter, folded neatly under a coffee mug. My hand shook as I opened it. Sarah's handwriting, usually so warm and loopy, was sharp, cold, unfamiliar. James, I can't do this anymore. The kids and I are gone. I'm filing for divorce. Don't try to find us. You chose the army over us, and I'm done waiting. Sarah. The words hit me like a grenade. Divorce. After everything we'd been through, I'd spent years dodging bullets, missing birthdays, and writing letters from bunkers, all for them. I thought Sarah understood. She'd always said she was proud of me, that she'd wait as long as it took. I sank into a chair, the note crumpling in my fist. My first instinct was to call her again, but her phone was still off. I tried her parents, her sister, our mutual friends. No one answered. It was like I'd been erased from their lives. Days turned into weeks. I stayed in the house, sleeping on the couch because our bed felt too empty. I kept hoping Sarah would come back, that this was just a fight we could work through. I'd replay our last video call, 6 months ago, when she'd smiled and said, "We're so proud of you, James. Come home safe." Had it all been a lie? I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The silence was deafening, broken only by the creak of the house settling at night. I started noticing things. Missing photo frames, Emma's favorite stuffed bunny gone, Liam's soccer trophy vanished. It wasn't just that they'd left, they'd erased me. I hired a lawyer, Mark, a grizzled veteran who'd seen his fair share of messy divorces. He had a buzz cut and a no-nonsense attitude, his office lined with photos of him in Desert Storm. "This doesn't look good, James," he said, reading Sarah's note. "She's been planning this. You need to prepare for a fight." A week later, I was served divorce papers. Sarah was seeking full custody of the kids, the house, and alimony. The documents painted me as an absent, neglectful husband who'd abandoned his family for the military. They cited my long deployments, my erratic behavior after returning from my second tour, even a fabricated claim that I'd yelled at the kids during a video call. It was a punch to the gut. I'd been fighting for my country, for them, and now I was the villain. Mark urged me to fight back, but I was exhausted. 3 deployments had left me with scars, shrapnel in my leg, nightmares that woke me in a cold sweat, a ringing in my ears that never stopped. I didn't want a war with Sarah. I just wanted my family back. I kept thinking about Emma's drawings, Liam's voice messages. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't the monster she was making me out to be. Then I got a call from Tom, an old bunkmate from my second tour. We'd saved each other's lives more than once, and he'd always had my back. "James, you need to hear this," he said, his voice low. He'd heard through the grapevine that Sarah had been seen around town with another man, a guy named Greg Larson, a hotshot real estate agent with a flashy smile and a Rolex. Tom didn't have details, but he said Sarah had been living at Greg's place, and the kids were with her. "I'm sorry, man," he said. "I thought you should know." The betrayal stung worse than any wound I'd taken in combat. Sarah hadn't just left, she'd replaced me. I started digging. I wasn't a tech genius, but I knew how to follow a trail. Sarah had locked me out of her social media, but a mutual friend, Jenny, let slip that Sarah had been posting pictures of fancy dinners, new clothes, and weekend trips to the coast, things we could never afford on my sergeant's salary. Jenny hesitated, then sent me a screenshot. Sarah and Greg, arm in arm at a winery, Emma and Liam in the background, looking uncomfortable. My kids, with him. I drove by Greg's address, a swanky condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows. Sarah's car was parked outside, and I saw Liam's bike on the porch, Emma's pink helmet next to it. It took everything in me not to storm in and demand answers. Instead, I went to Mark. "I need proof," I told him, my voice shaking with rage. "Something's not right." He nodded and put me in touch with a private investigator, Lisa, who specialized in messy divorces. Lisa was a former cop, sharp as a tack, with a knack for finding what people wanted to hide. She was expensive, but I didn't care. I cashed out part of my savings and told her to get to work. Lisa worked fast. Within a week, she had a dossier thick enough to choke a horse. Sarah had been seeing Greg for over a year while I was still overseas, sweating in a bunker, writing her letters about how much I missed her. Text messages showed them planning dates, vacations, even joking about when James is out of the picture. Hotel receipts, bank statements, and emails painted a clear picture. Sarah had been draining our joint savings account, funneling money to Greg for investments in his real estate ventures. But the real bombshell was a set of documents Lisa uncovered. Sarah and Greg had been working with a shady lawyer to forge financial records, making it look like I'd been hiding assets to screw her over in the divorce. They'd even fabricated medical reports claiming my PTSD made me a danger to the kids, citing violent outbursts that never happened. I was livid, but Lisa's findings gave me something I hadn't had in weeks: leverage. I told Mark to stall the divorce proceedings. "I've got something," I said, handing him the dossier. He read through it, his eyebrows climbing higher with every page. "This is gold, James," he said, a rare grin breaking through. "But we need to play this smart. If we show our hand too soon, they'll cover their tracks." While Mark prepared our case, I started piecing together my own ammunition. I went through old files in the attic, looking for anything that could help. That's when I found a yellowed envelope tucked inside a box of deployment keepsakes. It was a postnuptial agreement Sarah and I had signed during my second tour. She'd suggested it after I'd taken shrapnel in my leg, a close call that had her sobbing over the phone. "We need to protect our future," she'd said, her voice trembling. The agreement stipulated that if either of us committed infidelity, the other would receive the majority of our assets, including the house, and full custody of the kids. At the time, I'd thought it was a formality, a way to ease her fears. Now, it was my lifeline. I spent the next month preparing, not just legally but mentally. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patel, to deal with the anger and betrayal. She helped me process the nightmares, the guilt, the fear that I'd lost my kids forever. I wrote letters to Emma and Liam every night, even though I didn't know where to send them. I told them about the stars in the desert, the friends I'd lost, the promises I'd made to come home. I wasn't perfect, but I loved them more than anything. I also reached out to Sarah's parents, who were cold but didn't shut me out completely. They hinted that Sarah had been different lately, spending money they didn't know she had. It was a small confirmation, but it fueled my resolve. The divorce hearing was set for a humid morning in July. The courtroom was small, sterile, with flickering fluorescent lights and a judge who looked like he'd seen 1,000 cases like ours. Judge Harlan was in his 60s, with a stern face and a reputation for fairness. Sarah sat across from me, her blonde hair pulled back, her face a mask of calm confidence. She wore a tailored dress, probably bought with my savings, and avoided my gaze. Greg was there too, sitting in the back, smirking like he'd already won. His Rolex glinted under the lights, and I wanted to wipe that smug look off his face. Sarah's lawyer, a slick guy named Peterson, laid out her case with surgical precision. He painted me as an absent father, emotionally distant, potentially dangerous. They presented evidence of my supposed financial misconduct, forged bank statements showing offshore accounts I'd never opened. They cited my PTSD, claiming I'd screamed at the kids during a video call, a lie so blatant it made my blood boil. Peterson even brought up a letter from a therapist I'd never met, diagnosing me as unstable. The lies piled up, each one a knife in my chest. When it was our turn, Mark stood up, calm but commanding. "Your Honor, we have evidence that contradicts the plaintiff's claims," he said. He handed the judge a thick envelope containing Lisa's dossier, the forged financial records, text messages between Sarah and Greg, hotel receipts, and proof of their affair. But the real kicker was the postnuptial agreement, notarized and airtight. Mark explained its terms clearly. Infidelity meant Sarah forfeited her claims to the house, assets, and custody. Judge Harlan read through the documents, his expression unreadable. Sarah's lawyer objected, claiming the evidence was inadmissible, that the texts were private, that the postnuptial was outdated. Mark was ready. He'd had every document verified, every receipt cross-checked. He called Lisa to the stand, who testified about her findings with the precision of a sniper. She described the money trail, the forged records, the affair that started while I was dodging IEDs. Sarah's face went pale, her hands twisting in her lap. Greg shifted uncomfortably, his smirk gone, his eyes darting to the exit. The judge asked Sarah to explain the communications with Greg dated during my deployment. She stammered, claiming they were just friends, that she'd been lonely, that I'd driven her to it by being gone so long. Her voice cracked, but there was no sympathy in the room. Peterson tried to redirect, but the damage was done. Judge Harlan called for a recess to review the evidence further, and I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in months. During the break, I sat in the hallway, staring at a photo of Emma and Liam on my phone. It was from 2 years ago, at a county fair, their faces sticky with cotton candy. I'd promised them a trip to the zoo when I got back. I was still holding on to that promise. Mark clapped a hand on my shoulder. "We've got this, James. Stay strong." When we reconvened, Judge Harlan's voice was steady but firm. He ruled in my favor. The postnuptial agreement was upheld, granting me the house and primary custody of Emma and Liam. Sarah's claims of my instability were dismissed, the forged financial records deemed fraudulent. The judge referred Sarah and Greg's financial misconduct to a prosecutor for further investigation, citing potential charges of fraud and embezzlement. Greg's real estate license was now at risk, his investments under scrutiny. Sarah was ordered to repay the money she'd siphoned from our account, and her alimony request was denied. As we left the courtroom, Sarah tried to approach me, tears streaming down her face. "James, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared, lonely. I made a mistake." I looked at her, the woman I'd loved for over a decade, and felt a strange mix of pity and resolve. "You made your choice, Sarah," I said. "You chose him over us. Now live with it." That evening, I drove to Sarah's parents' house to pick up Emma and Liam. They were staying there, caught in the middle of their mother's lies. When I walked in, Emma ran to me, her arms wrapping around my waist. "Daddy, you're back," she sobbed. Liam was quieter, his eyes wary, but he hugged me too, his small body trembling. Sarah had told them I didn't want them anymore, that I'd chosen the army over them. It broke my heart, but I knelt down and promised I'd never leave them again. Rebuilding our relationship wasn't easy. Emma had nightmares, waking up crying for her mom. Liam was angry, lashing out about the months they'd spent with Greg, who'd ignored them unless Sarah was around. I enrolled them in counseling, and we started small traditions, pizza nights on Fridays, bike rides on weekends, reading my deployment letters together. I told them about the desert stars, the soldiers who'd become my brothers, the promises I'd made to come home. Slowly, they started to trust me again. Months later, I heard Sarah had moved out of Greg's condo. The investigation into their financial schemes had led to charges, and Greg's real estate business was crumbling. Sarah was working odd jobs, living in a small apartment, trying to rebuild her life. I didn't wish her harm, but I didn't forgive her either. My focus was on my kids, our home, and the life we were building. I took them to the zoo, as promised, and watching them laugh at the giraffes felt like a victory sweeter than any courtroom win. That one document, the postnuptial agreement, had changed everything. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about giving me back my family, my purpose. I'd fought for my country, and now I'd fought for my kids, and I'd won.